Welcome to the Woodpreneur podcast, the number one podcast for the business and marketing side of the lumber, woodworking, hardwood flooring, and sawmill industry. I'm your host, Steve from Acres of Timber. Each week, we feature various wood business owners and entrepreneurs from around the globe. We share their stories, paths, insights so that you can network, learn, and grow your own wood business. Thank you so much for listening. Now enjoy the episode. The Woodpreneur podcast is proudly sponsored by Acres CRM. Acres CRM is the wood industry's only customer relationship management software dedicated to helping you automate your sales and marketing so that you can focus on serving your customers and growing your business. You can visit acresoftimber.com to learn more and to schedule a demo. Once again, that's acresoftimber.com. Hey, welcome to a brand new episode of the Woodpreneur podcast. This is your host, Steve. Today's guest is Mike McGarry from Urban Lumber Canada, right? Is that the official name?
Hey, Steve. Yeah, you got it right. Urban Lumber MB.
Awesome.
Firm. We're from Manitoba. Winnipeg, to be exact.
Awesome. Can you tell everybody about your origin story? How'd you get started?
Yeah, well, it's actually kind of a wild story. I'll try and make it as quick as possible. I've been at the Urban Lumber Game since about 2018. In Winnipeg, we're losing a ton of trees in our urban canopy, mostly due to disease, Dutch elm disease and emerald ash borer. And so in 2018, I decided, hey, I've seen other companies pull this off in other cities. Why can't we do this here in Winnipeg? At the time, though, there was a ton of red tape as to utilizing anything with diseased trees, particularly, there's 3 levels of government basically saying there's no way that we can let you run a sawmill using these trees. So, it took a lot of lobbying and a lot of convincing to eventually get to the point where I could run a pilot project, basically just to convince the city that this is a feasible option. So I borrowed as much money as I possibly could. At the time, I had $50K to try and pull together a full sawmill facility. And I found a nice landlord that gave me a building to rent for cheap, found a used forklift, found an old sawmill that I rebuilt into an electric sawmill, bought an edger, and it just started milling, just really figuring out as I went every step of the way. The mechanical side especially was the first challenge. And lo and behold, we were making fantastic lumber. The pilot project was a smashing success. I wrote up a report, the city approved it and said, hey, they basically gave us a go-ahead to scale up to a full-scale sawmill business. Oh, by the way, when I say we, I'm talking about my partner, Carly. She's actually my partner in life and partner in business. Shout out to Carly. So we decided to scale up and we went shopping. We got a new LT50. We invested in an eye-dry kiln, some new equipment, new building, and went at it. At the time, I think it was 25 or something, and terrified of the amount of financial risk I was taking. And so to alleviate that risk, I foolishly thought I needed a partner. So I took on a business partner. And that just did not pan out well, which is something that I hear from business people all the time. I said that's such a common story. And well, it happened to me. So I went from a little pilot project to a full scale up to having to walk away from all of it and leaving everything behind with that partner. I think that was 2019, 2020. And so I was absolutely devastated. It was a big heartbreak for sure. And so much blood, sweat, and tears just down the drain. So me and my partner, Carly, we're tail between our legs, went back to the industry that we are originally from, which is forestry. We're both trained as foresters. So we hightailed it up north in northern Canada and hid out for a year, doing traditional forestry work. And we thought that was the past. We're never going to touch sawmilling again. We gave it our best shot.
Yeah.
And in the middle of northern Canada, I get a phone call one day, and this guy had basically headhunted me from a neighboring province who had this same idea that he wanted to start a big sawmill company in Winnipeg because there were so many trees coming down. And this guy already had a big arborist company. He had 45 employees. He had the bank behind him to finance a project like this. And he flies all the way up and tracks me down to northern Canada and says, hey, do you want to start a sawmill company for me in Winnipeg? But I'll be financing it. You're just, managing, doing what you do, which is, the equipment side, the forestry side, and you know how to saw. So I'm thinking, wow, this is too good to be true. I get to do what I love without the risk that I had before. I'm like, this is perfect. So we pack up, we move back south to Winnipeg to start another sawmill company.
Wow.
And while we're down there, before it really gets off the ground, I'm starting to get some red flags are kind of starting to stick up that like all is not well with this company.
Mm-hmm.
And sure enough, my instincts are correct. After moving down and working for only a few months, building up a new sawmill, this guy just disappears, like
Wow.
gone. And left all his equipment in my hands too. Like all this arborist, like we're talking bucket trucks and skid steers and grinders.
Wow. He left it all?
He left it all. Haven't heard from
Wow.
the guy since. So all of a sudden I'm like down here being like, this has been a wild ride. What do I do now? And so slowly a bunch of the equipment ends up getting repoed from this property where it's being stored at. And the property owner where all this stuff's being stored at and me start bonding because we're both kind of been left high and dry. We've totally both been screwed. And both of us are just like, how on earth did we get ourselves involved in this thing? And so me and this guy, he's a local business owner. He owns a successful business here in Winnipeg. Start talking and we start bonding over business and stuff. And this guy that kind of screwed us over, and he starts hearing about my background and what my plans are and what we were planning to accomplish. And he chips in and says, hey, like, I'm down to invest in something like that. That sounds actually right up my alley. So me and him partnered up, and fast forward to today, and we are in full production right now in Winnipeg, urban sawmilling, just urban logs, mostly American elm. Sorry.
Wow.
I hope I made that short enough, but it's a long story.
Well, I always tell people one of my first businesses, I had a partner and it didn't go well. I mean, it happened. Things happen, right? It's like any relationship. And then my second business, I didn't have a partner. And my third business, I didn't have a partner. But then I realized that it's good to have good people around you. And so what are 3 things that you could learn from that crazy experience that you went through?
Oh man, I learned so much through that. The first thing I learned is, what to kind of watch for. And just because somebody seems like a good guy right off the hop, it does not mean you guys can do business together, I mean, I got great friends that are awesome people that I would never go in business with. And that was just kind of a lesson I had to learn because, it's not a huge industry up here for urban lumber or sawmilling. So as soon as somebody had interest, it was like, oh, well, we must be a match made in heaven. Not the case.
Yeah. Yeah.
And second, I guess, would just be how people treat other people too. You got to have a team all on the right page and all respectful to one another. That's the only way to move forward and be successful, in my opinion, is having a good team, which I'm so thankful we have a wicked team now. We all get along so well. We have a fantastic investor, like I said, that's helped push this off the ground as well. And it's been good. It's been a wild learning experience, but I mean, you kind of need to have those battle scars to really push forward.
And what was the third thing? So you said 2.
I would say the third thing I learned too would be, having set up facilities 3 times with all brand new equipment. Well, when I say brand new to that business, I mean, lots of it's used equipment moving around. I'd say the third thing I learned through all of that is, how to efficiently and effectively set up a facility. Everything from the electrical side of things to the mechanical side of things, how to just efficiently set up and get going. What you learn after doing it the third time around.
Yeah. Well, so tell us about the operation now. Like, how big is it? What are you producing? How big is your team?
Yeah. So right now we got two full-timers. I guess 3 full-time actually, technically. And then myself and my partner / fiance Carly work full-time too. So there's like 5 of us going full-time.
Cool.
Winnipeg's an interesting city. We have the largest forest of North American or American elm, which is a tree species that's been pretty much wiped out through the States and most of Canada. And so it's all coming down here. We're losing 8,000 trees per year. So we're milling almost exclusively right now American elm. We produce 8-quarter lumber, 5-quarter lumber, and then an insane amount of charcuterie stock. It just blows my mind how many people out there are making bath boards and cheese boards and whatnot, or whatever else out of charcuterie stock. But that's definitely our number one seller. We also do live edge slabs as well. And we're always trying to push into the architectural side of things. We would love to get involved in some big custom projects and just really incorporate Winnipeg's trees into our local architecture.
Right now, so you said there's 5 of you. You are selling kiln dried lumber, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
at
we kill.
charcuterie stock slabs and mainly a lot of elm, right?
Yeah, yeah. I would say like 95% American elm right now.
How does elm hold up? Like, what other purposes are there? I mean, is there possibility of doing millwork, trim, flooring?
Oh yeah. So American elm is a beautiful, beautiful grained wood because it's got an interlocking grain. It makes really neat patterns. And although it's one of the softers of the hardwoods, it's
Hmm.
still like, it's a comparable hardwood species and it works great for millwork. People use it for hardwood flooring. It's got a multitude of uses. The challenge is that not a lot of people are familiar with American elm. So a huge barrier to us is the educational side, trying to educate millwork companies, architects, lumber stores, you name it, that, hey, this is a comparable species that came from a local source rather than being imported from the Eastern United States or Eastern Canada.
Mm.
There's a wild statistic here in our city where we landfill over 2 million board feet of hardwood lumber worth of logs per year. On the
That's
other
ridiculous.
On the other hand, we import, get this, 99.9% of the hardwoods being used in manufacturing or any sort of business in our city is imported. Like, it just doesn't make
Wow.
sense. Kills me.
That doesn't make sense at all. And they're dumping 2 million board feet, right?
2 million board feet at least, for sure.
And from those 8,000 trees that come out every year, you
Yeah,
think?
and that's just one species. That's just the American elms, let alone
Wow.
the regular trees that come down due to liabilities and development of other species in the city.
And so talk to me about the vision.
Well, the vision is to change the industry here in our city of how we think of the urban forest and how we can utilize it in our everyday lives. So as much as like we want to be the wholesaler basically to all the other industries to use our product, we also just want to be able to provide finished products as well for Winnipeggers to use their own trees in their own homes. And part of that is, by manufacturing finished product, like we got a line of live edge shelves coming out right now. We're
Mm.
doing mantles, that kind of thing. But sorry, to get back to the ultimate vision. The ultimate vision is to have people realize the absurdity of importing hardwood lumber when it's
Yeah.
right here, and to have people take the risk. Just because your swatch says ash, oak, maple, try them. Why not?
Try.
What do you have to lose?
What do you have the capacity? What are you milling a month?
Well, we're doing about 1,000 board feet a day.
Wow.
I would say that's about our average. It's about 1,000 board feet a day, and that can be lumber, charcuterie stock. I would say mostly lumber, though. So we're looking around anywhere between 15 to 20,000 board feet a month.
Wow. Wow. And what kind of mill do you have?
I got a modified LT40 wood miser. I took the idea from Paul at Canadian Woodworks. I don't know if you're familiar with him.
Yeah, yeah,
He's got
yeah.
that video out there where he cuts his sawmill in half and extends it. Yeah, so I saw that video and went, oh man, I gotta try that. You know what? I'm not a fabricator whatsoever. Like, that's not my major skill set, but it was one of the few
Yeah.
experimental fabrication projects that worked out beautifully. So we took it from a 28-inch wide cut capacity to we're at 42.
Wow. Wow. That's
Yeah.
kind of incredible.
And then we also have a big slab mill. We have an LX 250.
Yeah, the wood miser.
Yeah, the wood miser. We run that one outside for bigger stock.
Mm-hmm. Your marketing, how are you getting the word out?
That's a great question. So the marketing, we've been so focused. Oh, I should mention, we've only been in production now since probably June, July of this year in its current
Okay.
form. We spent so much time just getting production, all the kinks worked out. We're just starting to jump on the marketing side now, where it's like, okay, we got to really educate people on, what elm can be used for and the positives of using local lumber.
Yeah.
So right now we're mostly just Instagram, and we're just starting to look into getting into Google Ads and that sort of thing.
Cool. Very cool. Very cool. What's the motivation? What kept you, your third iteration of this? Like, what kind of kept you at this? Was it the forestry degree and knowing that, like, your love of trees? What was it?
That's a great question. I don't even know where it came from, the amount of motivation to just keep pushing. Like we've had some awful, awful times. We've had some wicked times, but I've just been pushing since 2018 just to solve one problem, which is stop throwing out perfectly good hardwood logs into our landfill. So
Yeah.
I think what keeps me going is knowing that if I'm not doing this, all these logs just keep going into landfill and everyone just kind of, washes their hands of it. And it's just the absurdity, like I mentioned, about importing all this hardwood while we're throwing it all out in the landfill. And I think I'm fortunate enough that I have the skill set to be able to pull this off. So I think that's what keeps me going. Like gets me up in the morning every day.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Yeah, I love the focus, of Winnipeg, urban lumber, the trees. If you focus on a geographic area, you could really dominate, right?
That is the focus too, is we're trying to keep it as local as possible.
Yeah, yeah. And develop pride, right? Develop a brand name.
For sure.
That's cool. Hey, dude, so this is a part of the interview where I give you any marketing or business advice. And so is there anything that you need help with or marketing business wise that I could help you?
Yeah, I guess the big question from me would be what your recommendations are as far as, doing the marketing yourself versus at what point does it make sense to throw a little bit of money at someone doing it for you? Or do you think this is something that can be done fully in-house?
That's a really great question. So I would say I found success with clients when they are, they probably at like 30 to 50K a month, right? That they can have an outside agency, right? Come in and help. Beforehand, you can start building capacity internally. I almost feel like, how anybody could potentially run a sawmill, right? Like everybody should be able to at least understand marketing because now marketing has changed so that the person that's running the sawmill could be a content creator for your business, right? And like everybody should have that in mind. Like, oh, this is cool. Like I'll just put out my phone and, put it on a stand and just hit record or time lapse, right? And so building capacity internally is probably key. Like you as the sort of leader, I think getting admin help at first is really important. And now we're moving into a stage where content is the new oil, right? It's like people need to know you with short attention spans. It's more about quantity versus quality. And so I would just build more capacity internally before you start thinking about hiring an agency, right? Like if you have a website, there's some core things that you should focus on, little things that you can outsource. You need to know your numbers, first of all. How much is one client worth, right? And then reverse engineer how much you're willing to pay to get that client, knowing that there is a repeatable, if you have a consumable product where people are going to come back more and more, then that's potentially good, right? And so if you have a builder client that, buys truckloads every now and then from you, right? That could be a very valuable client. So the things that I would invest in right now is search engine optimization for sure. Yeah. Have a blog, make sure that you're number one ranked in all of your search terms and categories. The other thing that I would focus on is building a personal brand around you as the leader of the company and be the most popular wood company in your town. Like make that the goal. Third is understand how to use leverage ads strategically. Leveraging ads just means like you just want more traffic to your website, right? It's not necessarily about the sales because you have to perfect your message, but like it really comes down to making sure that everybody knows about you. That's the most important. By building capacity internally of being a marketer, just learning that stuff. And then again, you can outsource social media, you can outsource search engine optimization, right? But like when it comes to like real campaign strategy, once you hit like, 30 to 50, I would even say up to 70 to 80,000 a month. Like, yeah, you could bring an outside agency because they're going to get you to 100, 150,000 a month, right? And so up until now, the search engine optimization is a really great thing. It's easy. Well, Mike, thank you so much. Your website is urban-lumber.ca. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. All right, take care. Thanks so much for listening to the Woodpreneur podcast, the #1 podcast for the business and marketing side of the lumber, woodworking, hardwood flooring, and sawmill industry. If you like what you heard, please give us a 5-star rating and review. You can also tap into our community by visiting woodpreneurlife.com. Once again, that's woodpreneurlife.com. Thank you, and I'll see you on the next episode.